today, the 26th of September, is World Contraceptives Day 2022. We'll be talking about it, and we're joined by the ogre from the top, from the government.
At the top.
At the top, right up there. Before we welcome and introduce him, let's hear the day's Proverbs. CT?
Yes, our Proverbs for the next few days from the country of Niger, I am told. It's not Niger, it's Niger. Ashes fly back into the face of those who throw them.
Ashes do what? From what?
Ashes, not ashes.
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 It's not ashes.
Ash, ile.
Ashes throw back.
It would be interesting to see ashes falling from the sky.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Jivu, in other words, in Kiswahili.
Right.
You chuck it. As you say, throwing caution to the wind. Now, if you throw ashes to the wind, it comes back to your face.
Pop.
And as I said, if perchance you had opened your mouth when you're throwing them, some of them will find their way back.
Straight into the mouth.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it will be one moment ashes in your hands, then in the wind, and then some of it in your mouth and perhaps even your eyes.
Okay. Dr. Andrew Mulwa, Director of Medical Services, Promotive and Preventive Health. Good morning, Daktari.
Good morning.
Good to have you again on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Every time we see you, it's like a new year. So Happy New Year.
I've been here in this year. Happy New Year.
It's a long time, Bana. It was before August 9th.
Yes.
After August 9th, we have a new year. Okay. How you doing?
Thank you. Always my pleasure.
Always a pleasure to have you. That proverb, does it make sense? Because I saw you nodding, like, yeah, you could relate.
I
come
from a community, and I grew up in a community where riddles, proverbs were shared by my grandmother. So, yes, I think there was one similar to that from the Kamba community.
How did she tell it to you?
It was about sand. That you throw sand in the wind, it comes back to you.
And what did that proverb mean? What does it intend to teach?
Every time you do anything, always be prepared that repercussions could actually affect you. Yeah.
For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Even Newton's grandmother
told
him the same.
Yeah.
Daktari, today is World Contraceptives Day 2022. What does that mean? In fact, somebody is even asking, so some of these days, how are we supposed to celebrate this day? By doing what?
This is a global, an international day that has been set to celebrate contraceptive and the use of contraceptive family planning in managing population development and family and health. So it's a day that has been set aside globally to celebrate contraception and its value in the growth of society, basically. So it's a day of advocacy, so to speak. It's a day that we pose as a global community to do advocacy on the importance and the value of contraception.
Okay. So do we look at contraception from, global view of family planning?
Yes, you cannot talk about contraception and the family planning, contraception are one side of the same coin. But in terms of, because the right approach, because when you say family planning, it means one has to be in a family setup where family setup is husband and wife, and we know that is not the case always. So I think this is just terminology. Of use of terminology to describe the same thing. What this means is that persons or women and men of reproductive age are able to have a choice of when to have a child and the number of children that they want to have, when they want. And there are various methods that are available for them. Of course, we look at family planning contraception from, I already mentioned, two perspectives, from a population development perspective and a health perspective. Where population development, we are talking about the economy, we are talking about the resources that are available for a country, and the standards of living for a community. Then from a health perspective, you talk about the health of the mother, the health of the child, and the whole life cycle of an individual. That if, and research has shown that if spacing between one child and another happens, there is an increase there is a decrease in the likelihood of maternal mortality. There is an increase of 60% increase in decrease in child mortality if spacing of a child is done. Then now from the economic perspective, having number of children that one can take care of, education, nutrition, and all that. Yes.
When you talk about this matter of contraceptives, then you're actually basically in the realm of sexual and reproductive health rights.
Yes.
Which opens up the entire Pandora's box about access to information, access to services, and it now become age-specific. The conversation that has been taking place over the last couple of years in this country about people who are sexually active, and we know that children are sexually active below 18, and rather than should also have access then to information, access to services, includes contraceptives. Wade into it.
I think it was just 3 months ago or so that we launched the National Reproductive Health Policy 2022-2032, which, of course, gives proper direction in terms of access to contraceptives for adolescents and young people. The reality is out there, adolescents and young people who are below the legal age are sexually active and therefore would benefit from contraception. The reality is we have what we call age-appropriate sex education. This is a continuous process. Age-appropriate sex education means between the age of 0 and 5, there is some messaging, and that is what the ministry has been working on. There is some sexual reproductive health messaging for that group. Between 5 and 10, 12, there is messaging for those children. Then between 12 and 19, there is a message for that cohort. Then, so what we advocate, and this is even part of the curriculum, age-appropriate sex education. We are aware that there's the Children's Act, there's issues of consent, there's the constitutional and the legal age where consent has to be given. So therefore, we recognize that access to family planning or contraception for young people should not be used to open up our society for misuse. So what we are in essence doing, it is the healthcare provider will have to make a decision in the best interest of the child. Because if the child is sexually active, if you don't give them contraception, but there must be a consent process, where consent does not necessarily mean from the parent. It could be from a significant adult in the child's life. Could as well be from a fellow healthcare worker. So it is working in the best interest of the child to ensure that the child gets age-appropriate education before they are exposed. So we cannot open up and say, oh, anyone above the age of 10, come to facilities, have your family planning or contraception, because they are social, they are cultural, they are
religious
considerations that we have to make. And Kenya is a fairly religious community.
As we have seen. What is it, Dr. Then who should be having these conversations? Because there have been, we're looking at the contraception issue. Let's look at some of the numbers that we have over the last year. We're looking at hundreds of thousands of girls who then became pregnant, who are in school. And a little bit more of a worrying statistic is that many of these girls who were spoken to, unbelievably, did not understand this process of getting pregnant. It might seem bizarre, but that is just the truth. That they didn't understand that essentially 1 + 1 = 2, this act plus another act then would result in pregnancy. So we're dealing with now many layers of miscommunication, or rather lack of information completely, isn't it? So this information that you've talked about that is absolutely necessary for the different cohorts, 0 to 5, 5 to 12, 12 to 19, who should be having these conversations with these children? And I'm not just talking about girls here, girls and boys. Who should be having these conversations?
I think is a whole society communication that needs to, education that needs to approach, that needs to be done. Primarily, the health sector should lead the conversation in terms of engaging religious leaders, community leaders, parents, schools, so that it's a whole society approach. We have a program that we are running specifically for adolescents and young persons that we are calling the triple threat, because the issues of HIV, teenage pregnancies, which is a campaign that we are doing at the villages, in the locations, working with community leaders, the chiefs, opinion leaders, religious leaders, the community health workers, to have this conversation about teenage pregnancies and education. We also are running a program in the with the Ministry of Education through the school health program, where we are doing health education to our school-going children. We launched just the other day a document, what we call the teenage guideline, which adolescent guideline, which is a scientifically developed document that any teenager. I have a problem having some of the sexual conversation with my adolescent daughter. So when I feel I am unable, at least she has something that she can read. I have something that is a parent that I can read and give her facts that have been established, and this is helping. We are in the process of now developing adolescents' sexual and reproductive health policy, which will of course encompass, because the mother reproductive health policy carries reproductive health issues for the entire population. We are now going granular and developing a policy specific for the adolescents and young persons. And I think these are some of the efforts that as a ministry we are working with. But the issue of this education, it is the parent, it is the brother, the whole society. Everyone in the community, in the society, has a role to play in terms of this sex education. So it's upon us as a ministry to ensure that we have enough structures in the communities that deliver these messages.
Dr. When you talk of adolescents, from the perspective of the ministry, would you say, from what you've observed or researched on, which group of people influence the adolescents the most?
In terms of influence, the reality is the peers and the immediate cohort. 19 to 24 influences 10 to 19. Because they are closer, they interact more, they have a language, they even understand each other.
They have a lot more in common.
They have a lot more in common. So there is also that very important aspect of peer education. And we have a lot of young people who we are working with as a ministry, who we are working on, not just the Ministry of Health, as a government, because we are talking about the National Population Control Department, the Council. We are talking about Ministry of Interior. We are talking about Ministry of Education. We have a lot of young people that we are working with to ensure that they pass this message to their peer. But the reality is us who are adults, I would say, above the youth, the 24 years, also have a big role to play, because in most places where policy is being made, you will unlikely get this. But we have one principle, that we don't talk about adolescents and young people without having them. Yeah. We actually have them in our technical working groups.
The reason why I ask this question is, and the very concept of peer groups, if peer groups are the greatest influencers, each of these categorizations, 10 to 19, to whatever the categorization is, the people who are most likely to effectively communicate what we want would be the peer group. But I'd like to find out what it is you have in terms of whether it's a curriculum or a program or a plan. And it's not just with the adolescents, but with every group, because the assumption is that when someone is an adult or is a parent, they will know how to communicate something. It's a fallacy. Being a parent just means you're a parent. The process of actually being able to communicate something as sensitive as that actually requires training. And it is a lot easier for somebody who is your peer to talk to you. You're more likely to take the information in. So if we take that categorization broadly, does the ministry have a plan to ensure that that is what happens so that it is effective? Parents are communicated to effectively, these age groups are communicated to effectively, then people have a far better chance of understanding what you want to pass along.
Yes, indeed, you have brought up a very important point that actually we recognize that being a parent does not necessarily mean you understand or you have the know-how of how, especially sexual education is always very difficult for a lot of parents. Very many parents actually struggle with sexual messaging to their children. And that's exactly the reason why, as a Ministry of Health, we are actually working even on a parent guide, so that parents who have adolescents, while we have the teenage guide, which any parent can have access to and learn, we believe that the parent themselves need also education to know what messages are you or you. So the point of having peers, I mentioned about the school education. We have a lot of programs. We have a whole department of adolescent and young persons in the ministry, a division. So we have engagement with young people. Recognize that peer education is very important.
How successful is that program?
We may say, because one of the major, of course, we always have very good programs. One of our major shortcomings is we do not have all the resources that we require to have countrywide, from community to every village.
Actually, I would like
programming.
Can I please disagree with you?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I will listen.
What resources do you need? You're talking about messaging.
You need the humans?
Yes.
Yes.
We have enough humans.
Yes. The humans have to be facilitated.
Facilitated how exactly?
They're in a school environment?
They have to be.
And the schools exist?
You have to get the humans to the school environment. Unless you have to get the humans to the school environment. You have to get someone to capacity build. This you have rightly mentioned that
they need training.
That they need training. You need training, and you are talking about a country. So you are talking about schools in this country, for example, are close to 25,000.
The disagreement is not to put you on the spot. The disagreement is to say that the ministry may be hampered because of those resources, but this isn't something that only the Ministry of Health can work on. You can't work independent of the Ministry of Education. You can't work independent of all the other ministries that are there. You can't work in silos. And if you're talking about trained personnel, the Ministry of Health has access to people who work in the NGO sector who do these things because they partner with ministries. You have people who've trained trainers who've trained other trainers. You have master trainers. The government has an enormous capacity, some of which in my mind just lies idle. It's not fully utilized. Now, what I'm saying is, yes, you're right when you talk about personnel being facilitated. COVID taught us that you don't need to physically be there. Now, the gains we made during COVID, can this not be used to do the very same thing that we're talking about? Because the story of resources, that one will never end. That's why there's an entire discipline called economics that tries to figure this thing out. Scarcity of resources and how do you manage it? I am saying this. I'm saying that if the will is there, and clearly by your being here, it's symptomatic of the fact that the will is there, that this is something that can be done. But certain realities must be faced. Number one, we're talking about parents being educated. Many parents don't even discuss sexual issues with their own partners. So how are they going to discuss it with their children?
Interesting.
And when they talk about it in parables.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done. Let's take a break. It's 27 minutes after 7. This is the Situation Room on SpiceFM, on KTN Home Online. Our guest this morning is Dr. Andrew Mulwa. He's the Director of Medical Services in charge of preventive and promotive health at the Ministry of Health. Today is World Contraceptive Day, and we are talking about access to this information and how best the government is actually rolling out the issues of contraceptive across the country for all age groups. From the young ones, information, to the old ones.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
City, you were driving somewhere with your question.
I was saying that there are many research projects in this country that deal with the same subject, contraception, adolescence. Contraceptions, young people below a certain age. Now, I was simply saying that the network of individuals that the Ministry of Health has access to can make this difficult task very, very plausible. The ministry itself may not be able to do certain things simply because of the constraints that they have, but the networks that they have can make it possible. And even if it can't be traversed throughout the country, you start where it is possible and then work your way towards ensuring that it is built up so that you have a plan within the next God knows how many years we'll be able to do this. But the constraints shouldn't be the limiting factor. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, I want to agree with you. And as a ministry, as government, we work very, very closely with even very, very local NGOs, CBOs, the development partners to ensure that where the resource gaps that exist are plugged in. But the reality is to launch the nationwide campaign that will require a little bit more resources than what is available. So we try to optimize what is already available through the partners, but there's still gaps that will exist. And I think not to defend and say we have done optimally, but to say we have done it, we are continuing to do it, but there are still some resource gaps that exist.
The challenge is when you're looking at things as government, you have to look at things holistically. You have to look at the entire country.
And
The
start
risk
from
of looking
prioritization.
the risk of looking at one part of the country and then leaving out others is you will be accused at some point of discrimination.
Yes, and we have to look at prioritization. When I get my first coin in this space as a government, my priority number one is to ensure that the products, the commodities are available. The people to deliver the commodities are available. And once that is done, now you establish an infrastructure to deliver it to the people, which essentially should be you identify the communities, engage the communities, know their demand, then plan backwards. But if you did the prioritization, then you will have greater demand, and when they come to the facility, there is nothing. There is no one to deliver the commodities or the products to the person. So it's a question of prioritization. It's a chicken and egg story. A chicken and egg story. So we have to get your priorities right, so that you don't create a demand, and the demand. When people come for the services, they don't get the people to deliver the services. They don't get the commodities that they require. So I would say there is a lot of balancing act that has to be done in the circumstances that we work in.
Okay. I want to go back to these hundreds of, these thousands of girls that we saw get pregnant, especially just before COVID times, and then up until this time, we were still looking at high numbers around different counties. Obviously, the contraception conversation comes in here because we're not going to start with issues of, I think we're too far in the conversation to now bring in the issue of, why are they they're having sex anyway, right? They're pregnant. So where then would the interventions come? Is it to say introduce the contraception conversation, introduce the sexual health conversation so that they have information? Or are we saying, look, since they're already engaging, let's now make sure that adequate contraception is available, and in terms of information, then they know how to use it? Where are we in that conversation?
I think the best approach, and this is our primary approach, is sex education. And I mentioned age-appropriate sex education.
Yes.
So that when, by the time a girl is 10 years, they know the secondary sexual characteristics and how adolescents, how they develop, they are able to get pregnant, how to relate with boys, how to have healthy relations, so that they are empowered with information about sexuality and all that. Then because most of these teenage or underage girls who get pregnant actually get pregnant in their first or also sexual encounter.
Yes.
So we cannot possibly have presumptive contraception because they are not sexually active. But because they do not have information, when they attempt it, they get pregnant. Only we are talking about huge numbers. We're talking about 320,000 girls between the age of 10 and 19 who got expectant in the last 1 year.
That is a high number.
Yeah, it is.
So it's quite high. And I actually keep saying every 3 years we have 1 million children with children.
Yep.
Yeah. And this is a situation that when you look at the statistics from 2019, 2020, we are actually on a downward trend. There was a time it was 374,000. Was 400,000 at some point. So while we appreciate the effort that is being done, a lot more can be done. We also need to have very, very candid conversation and ask ourselves, who are the people who are getting these children, these young people pregnant? So you have to also direct your education there. The young men between the age of 19 and 24 are responsible for this. So you need to have education amongst this so that they also understand that one, it is not legal. It's not legal to have a sexual encounter with any girl below the age of 18.
So, I'm sorry. So essentially what we're saying now is that of this, let's just take that 320,000 because that's the number that we're dealing with right now, has come down lower. So essentially we're saying any girl under 18 years who was pregnant essentially then is a victim of a crime.
Most of 90% of the time, of course, there are those even when sex is between underage and underage.
Yes,
it's not crime per se, but it is there are moral issues there. So it's still you cannot say it's okay. So and that is exactly what we are doing with the community leaders to make them aware that any underage pregnancy is a problem. May not be criminal, but any underage pregnancy is a problem. And therefore needs to be approached from that point so that everyone in the society, everyone in the community, be it the young boy who is 14 years, who is implicating a fellow 14-year-old, or the
19 with a 16.
And with all due respect to our border sector or the border guy who is dating a 16-year-old, they need to know that it's not appropriate, it's not right, and that's exactly why we are working with all the players, the religious leaders, the community leaders, including the border leader, the borders, including all the community leaders. Bring them to a platform, having this conversation, and say any teenage pregnancy, any underage pregnancy is a problem.
You know, on paper, Daktari, it's a problem. 300,000, like you're saying, in 3 years' time. But we have 1 million children with children. It's a big problem. Do you feel this problem coming to you as feedback from the community? From where the government sits, do you actually feel the community feeling, no, this is becoming an issue? This is an issue that needs to be addressed.
I think sometimes I want to have this, and now this is now my personal individual view of this. What is happening is we are transitioning a community that routinely our grandmothers our mothers were probably married off while they were 14.
Yeah.
Before the Children's Act, girls would marry. In fact, I remember by the time I did my KCSE, of the 10 girls that I went to primary school with, maybe 7 had been married off, and it was okay. So we are doing what is happening?
It's a cultural shift.
It's a cultural shift.
Okay.
It's a cultural shift which needs us to have very deeper conversation or deeper look at the issues, so that you recognize that my mother was married before 18 and it was okay. It was okay. And therefore, to move the society from that and recognize that there is now a legal age of 18 where sexuality and all that so we have to move, ensure that we have the elder generation, the middle age, and the younger generation. Because otherwise, not many years ago, before the Children's Act, which was 2006, it used to be commonplace that girls after class 8 would go and get married.
But you see, Dr. the age you speak of and the generation you speak of, pregnancy equaled marriage.
Yeah.
So that was deterrent. Men did not want to marry at that age. We are now in an era where pregnancy just means pregnancy. There's no responsibility attached to it. And that is why it is creating a problem. Because just because something is common, it doesn't mean it is right. And just because we have seen certain things often enough, doesn't mean, again, it is right. Remember, the time in which we speak of, from the times of my parents' time and even my time, the norms were appropriate for the time because it made sense then. And you're right, the mind doesn't quite change as fast as some of these things does. We are still stuck in those times, whereas we're in a modern time. But this messaging, beyond the Ministry of Health actually being the overseer, getting the communities to actually own these processes so that they are the ones who are championing it and not waiting for someone else to champion it for them, because the things we're saying happen within communities.
Indeed.
I'm not saying I have a solution. I'm simply thinking, how do we get to the point where the ownership that we spoke of in the time gone by, where a girl was pregnant,
A conversation takes place.
Yes, it
between
does.
the parents.
Yes, it does.
And now the conversation should be any pregnancy that is underage is a problem. And therefore, if the society just picks that, so that whatever mechanism is established to stop it is established, and it will differ from one community to another. The approaches will differ. Of course, there is the legal judicial system that any underage sex between underage girl and
boy
and someone above that 18 is defilement, and therefore is liable for prosecution and incarceration. That is one conversation, and therefore the legal judicial system comes in. But now we even with that, we need to have the religious leaders from a young age inculcate these messages. The young boys, as we produce more and more, and I'm not saying we had a lapse, but it only means there is in the transition, as rightly said, the transition happened too fast for us to have it inculcated in the spirit of everyone, member of the society.
You talk about any underage pregnancy being a problem, and I think sometimes, we can say these things and it could be clear to your understanding, but then for others who are not understanding, okay, so what? An underage girl gets pregnant, she'll have the baby, then we move on. That's what plays out in the minds. It could be simple thought, fine. But what are the problems that are associated with an underage pregnancy?
I think I'll begin by we have talked about the in terms of the legal part,
Yes.
that having sex with underage girl is not proper from a legal perspective. But now every teenage pregnancy comes with complications. first, the girls don't attend antenatal clinic. They do not do antenatal screening and prenatal screening. So they sometimes carry the pregnancy gets complications. They are at risk of getting pregnancy complications. They are not attending clinics and they are getting complications. So risk of maternal mortality is very, very high amongst this group. There is the other risk, which is now the illegal abortion, that sometimes when they discover they are pregnant, they attempt, and we are talking quite a number. I think 500,000. 500,000.
That's the number. Yeah.
They are illegal abortions that are attempted. They come with their complications, leading to mortality, leading to infections, leading to all sorts of issues. Then we're talking about difficult deliveries. That no antenatal clinic. So when you want to deliver, you have complicated delivery, obstructed labor, developing fistulas. You get a child who is not healthy. There's risk of HIV, and we have seen 42% of new HIV infections happen in that age group between 14 and 24. So we have all these health complications, all health risks that accompany teenage pregnancies, and therefore and now the child that is born, these underage girls are not working, so they are unable to provide the nutrition that is required for that child, and we have children who are malnourished, and the poverty cycle basically
just continues.
Yes, because the mother is unable to give good education. The child gets pregnant. Growth. The child of the child gets pregnant again at the age of 14, and the cycle continues. And that's why we it's very important for us to ensure that we have this conversation.
Do you think the government needs to take the bull by the horns and basically just elevate this conversation to a high level that it deserves? When you talk about 350,000 children getting pregnant in a year, 500,000 illegal abortions taking place, this is a serious problem. Now, we are talking about World Contraceptive Day, where we talk about, the need for awareness and access to contraceptives. But then we're also talking about being aware of the society and the cultural, religious, and all those hindrances that deter us from having an open conversation about contraceptives, especially among adolescents and young people. This is a problem. We need to find a way of addressing it. We need to have a way in which we talk about if it's contraceptives, if it's like what you're calling it, age-appropriate sexual awareness and reproductive health awareness, fine, but also access to information, access to the services, access to these conversations. The communities, the society seems not ready to have this conversation as moving. Maybe it's because you approach the society with law. This is right, this is wrong. And you're telling someone this is right, this is wrong. And they are trying to figure out, okay, this is right, it's wrong. How wrong is it? What's wrong about it? What's wrong with it? Maybe we need to just change the way they approach here, Dr. I don't know how, but...
That is exactly, and I think the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Education, and Planning, Department of the National Treasury, under the National Population Control Council. I think that is what we are actually working on. We recognize that as early as last year, and recognize the approaches that we have been working on.
No, you don't. I'll tell you why.
I've not created enough trust in the communities themselves. And that's why we changed our approach from the straight Ministry of Health is doing. We said, let's go to the communities. I have been to over 18 counties myself, now launching this program at the county level, but launching so that now they even move lower, so that there is this conversation that we're having here is done at the village level. So that we sit in our village, the pastor is there, the head teacher of the local primary school, secondary school, the community leaders are there and have this conversation of, we have this number of these 2 girls in our village who got pregnant last year. what are this? How do they get pregnant? How do we ensure that we prevent this at that local level? It will build a momentum that will be enough to stop this, to enhance this conversation and to stop this menace that we are talking about. I think the approach that we have developed between the ministry, what we call the triple threat campaign, is going to change things in a big way. In terms of now the teenage pregnancies, understanding the sexual education issues about girls and all that, because we are talking about moving this to the community level.
Goes all the way to the grassroots.
Yes.
Are there timelines for this campaign? Like, do we know this is when the campaign launches? It is being anchored, of course, by the new policy that you launched. This is when the campaign is starting, and this is when the campaign should end. And this is how we shall measure the impact of the campaign. Do we have?
Yes, we have an implementation framework, with, timelines, and how we have.
By the end of 2 years, what
yes.
should we expect to see and feel?
By the end of 2 years, I will not mention the numbers because I do not have them on my fingertips, but we expect to reduce teenage pregnancies by over 50%.
In 2 years?
Yes.
So in 2 years' time, then the government can also go to the National Assembly and they can easily bring the Sexual and Reproductive Health Rights Bill, and there'll be broad acceptance.
We hope so. We are hopeful. We will work to ensure that happens.
Okay. Let's end the conversation on a note of a story that appeared in the Standard last week. And this was regards to access to contraceptives.
So, the story came out, the details were quite scary in terms of the different testimonials that women who use this have been giving. But it's pointed to a herbal contraceptive that's widely used in the market in Kenya today, that's said to be a one-time take in terms of per month. So this contraception is taken once monthly. It's said to be herbal, so according to them, there are no side effects, and also it's quite affordable, and it's different from your normal pill, which we all know that the pill is a daily take, or if you're not taking the pill, you're taking a shot, which is a 3-month take, or if you have the implant, which is 4 to 5 years. This was a one-time per month. But then also health practitioners were talking about the side effects, which they have seen, the early onset of sexual development. Also, unfortunately, the onset of, the opposite sexual organs. If a girl was born, they would see that there was also the development of male genitalia. So obviously there was a problem there, and they were able to link this to the mother having taken this contraception. Another issue was that a lot of these women got pregnant anyway, even after having taken the contraception. So what's your take on that? Because it was actually quite, popular in the market, and quite a number of women have taken this and continue to take it.
I think we, as a ministry, we had a media roundtable, and we raised this as an issue of concern that out there is the Chinese medicine, so to speak, that is being sold as a herbal medicine and as an herbal contraceptive, as a herbal medicine, so to speak. And analysis has been done of the product, and it has shown that it is actually not herbal. It contains very high levels of estrogen, progesterone, and therefore, while it's being sold disguised as herbal, it is actually not herbal. And this is in the purview of the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, which did the analysis and posted a warning, including in their website. And these are we are talking about yesterday or last week. This has been ongoing for many years. I think from 2008. That this product is not a medical product, and therefore, by regulation, the Pharmacy and Poisons Board has a role to enforce that this product should not be in the market.
Available in the market.
Of course, we know, and I keep saying that there is a difference between the legal provisions and the realities on the ground, because this product coming to this does not follow the rightful channel in terms of being declared as a medical product, being inspected by PPP. So it's coming through the back door, so to speak. And therefore, we have warned the members of public that this product is not good, is not herbal, and like you rightly said, has been linked to adverse effects on the mother, on the child, on the unborn child, and therefore it's important that we ask our women out there to desist from the use. When a product is not registered, what are you banning? It is already getting in through an illegal means.
Okay, let me ask the different question. How do you make it illegal? Because
How do you make it?
How do you ensure that it is illegal to even have it?
I think that is exactly
That's the status.
that is the status.
The Pharmacy and
status.
Poisons Board says this
Yes.
is not allowed in the Kenyan
Ken-
market. That means
yeah.
it's illegal in the market. That means it's banned, right? But it finds its way through
The back
Yes.
door.
this
The back
other
door.
channels.
Yeah.
So maybe it's about enforcement. then.
Enforcement is about border surveillance, port surveillance.
And then public information.
Yes.
Because if people knew publicly that, well, this that's being sold, it is dangerous and these are the consequences, or these
Yes.
are the side effects of it,
Then they will distort the market because they will not buy. So whoever is bringing it here illegally will not have a market for their product, and therefore,
So is that something that you want to do as a ministry? Have a complete nationwide public awareness campaign. Please avoid this. Do not buy this.
from where I sit as a ministry, and I said this is the law established the Pharmacy and Poisons Act. Pharmacy and Poison Act established the PPB, which is of course an organ of the Ministry of Health, but they have the mandate to do that. And I am sure they have been doing it, and I already said they have published it in their website. And I think a bit more tightening of the ports of entry ports of entry to ensure that we are able to stop this, and of course continuous messaging, because beyond the public warning in the website and in newspapers, the message needs to be continuous so that the unsuspecting members of public are made aware.
They get to know about it. Dr. Hari, thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward to having you again and again and again.
Thank you. Welcome to the World Contraceptive Day celebration.
Where?
At Radisson Blue.
So what's happening on the day today?
We coming together, communities in the reproductive health space, in the contraceptive space, having conversation and celebrating the day. More of advocacy.
Okay. And awareness.
See you.